Hey everyone, and welcome back to my IGTV series. This one is going to be about living with anxiety, so it may be a few parts, or I may be able to fit it in one, but I'm going to try aim for my videos to go for about 10 minutes, so if I can't fit it all in this one, then it will just have to be another part. But anyway, so where it all started from for me was, we don't actually really know, besides like bloodline and your family having it and myself being the third generation that I'm aware of with it. I assume it's just more from, it's in my genes, I guess. But growing up, I wasn't really an anxious person. I don't really ever remember being an anxious person. I obviously remember like having troubles in school with like people or bullying, and then self-doubt would come from that, I guess, or when people were picking on your features or something, then you would get really, I don't know, full of doubt and fear maybe of what other people would think of you. But I never suffered deeply from depression or anxiety during my schooling years. And it wasn't until I had Aaliyah and became a mum that I was really aware of feelings, I guess, and how deeply they can affect you. So when I was pregnant with Aaliyah, after I had her, I was diagnosed with postnatal depression. So I don't really remember as such, because I guess it was 6 years ago and a lot's happened in 6 years. All I really remember is crying a lot, but I guess that comes from, I was a single mum as well, so that played a big part in it. But I do remember the midwife coming over and doing them tests on how you feel, and then she said, you'll have to go follow up with your GP, and I have a letter for them in regards to your mental health. So I went there and I pursued through with that, and I got a referral to see a psychologist. So I went and seen a psychologist. I went and seen my GP, and we decided that it was best to go and see a psychologist, which at that stage I still wasn't really aware of how badly depression can affect you as a person. So I was all for it. Like I didn't have any fears, or I wasn't scared of trying new things. And then I went to it, and I saw her a couple times, and I thought she was really good. Most of the time I had to bring Aaliyah because I was by myself and my parents worked, so I didn't really have anyone to watch her for me while I went to these appointments. And she would always praise me on like how much of a good mother I was. But it wasn't until it came down to talking about me, and she said that I don't have depression, I actually have something wrong with my lungs. So anyway, I left the appointment obviously crying, because I was like, the first time I opened myself to go see someone, and she tells me I don't have depression, I have actually something wrong with my lungs. So anyway, I stopped seeing her, and then that's when my fear, I guess, began, because you put so much faith into doctors or psychologists or whatever, and then they come around and tell you this isn't wrong with you, it's something else, and you're like, oh shit, well, what if there is? So anyway, I put it on the back burner for a bit, because I was a first time mom, I was getting used to everything, and I was just dealing with my emotions how anyone would. So if I felt down, I would cry, or my parents would suggest I go take some time to myself, whether that be sleeping or just sitting in my room by myself, and that's how I handled it. And then I just dealt with dealing with depression until she was 2. and I fell pregnant with Amaya, and I also moved out of home. So when I was out of home living by myself with just Aaliyah, I guess fear began to grow. I was by myself. I was a woman living in a house by herself with her daughter. Every sound would scare me. Every noise would scare me. I lived on a main road. So I became, I guess, paranoid of being picked on when there was no reason to be picked on. It was just my thoughts and feelings. So it began to the point of I couldn't be in this house by myself. If I was, my heart would just go crazy. And I never knew why. I thought something was wrong with me. So I would always call an ambulance, or I would call my mum and dad and say, look, mum and dad, I have to come over. Like, I can't deal with this anymore. And it wasn't until I was getting my nails done once, just before going out. And I had a huge, overwhelming feeling, and my heart started going, and I felt, I guess, a bit faint. And I said to my nail lady, I was like, look, I don't feel very well. I don't know how I feel, but I feel very agitated right now. So she obviously stopped what she was doing. It was a hot day too, so that may have played a part, but I went and laid down and my heart just wouldn't stop racing. So I started pacing around, and she's like, what should we do? I'm like, I'm not sure. I've never really felt this feeling before, but I feel a lot of fear right now. So then she called an ambulance, and it was my first time like any of this has ever happened, and I was full of fear. Didn't have anyone with me. My mum was obviously at work. We called an ambulance and I went to hospital. My mum met me there, and it was 5 straight hours of just tests and heart beating so fast, and I couldn't work out why. Anyway, they told me it was just anxiety, but I was like, well, how can it be anxiety when I've never had it before, you know? Like, I don't have anxiety. There's nothing wrong. And so I went home with my mum, feeling like I just ran a marathon. I felt absolutely drained. And I went home and tried to live my life as normal as possible. Yet I still live by myself. So every time I went back to this house, that feeling would come back. I couldn't even step in the door. And I remember driving back to my house, and I got maybe 5 minutes down the road, and I called my mum. I said, Mum, this feeling's back. I feel like I can't swallow. My heart's going so fast. And she's like, look, just turn around. And I turned around and I went back to the house, and they said to me, do you think it's time maybe you move back in with us? And I was the kind of person that I didn't bow down at my knees for help. Like, I hated asking for help. I hated feeling like I needed help, but I knew this is what I needed. I couldn't live by myself anymore. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't right for Aaliyah to see me like that so often. So we moved back home, and obviously I was pregnant with Amaya, but my parents didn't know. And then when I was pregnant with Amaya, I had a lot of health issues, which they thought was Graves related, which is an autoimmune disease. And I was on heart medication because I became tachycardia, which means your heart runs faster than normal. So all that happened, and I had Amaya, and then I started working really closely with a cardiologist, and as well as my GP the whole time. I always worked really close with my GP. And she said to me that I kept going back to see my cardiologist, and she was just a normal cardiologist. So there's many different types of cardiologists. There's ones that look into your electronics in your heart, and then there's ones that just look at the overall health. And so I had many tests, and she was like, look, it's just tachycardia, and I have low blood pressure, so they all just fall into one another. But no one ever diagnosed me with anxiety. So more fear came from, I guess, doctors not knowing what was wrong with me. So I began just to take medication. After about a month, I would not take this medication. My heart rate would get to 187, and I would be crying to my mum, like, why won't this stop, you know, like, why can't I help myself? And then she's like, just stop being silly, just take your medication, you know it's going to help you. And it literally took me about a month to start taking it. And it wasn't for anxiety, this was medication for my heart. So I took the medication straight away. Came down to 70. And then I felt so stupid that I didn't start taking that medication earlier. So I kept on taking this medication all like through my pregnancy with Amaya. I was fine. I had regular checkups with my doctor, excuse me, and my GP. And then I got to the end of my pregnancy with Amaya and I was still dealing with this tachycardia. So I saw that cardiologist again and she's like, look, that I can't see anything wrong with your heart as such. It's all fine. There's nothing major concerning about it besides that it beats extra fast. So I would always message people online or reach out and be like, does anyone else deal with this? Like, am I normal? Is there something like further deeper inside that's wrong with me? Am I going to have a heart attack? Am I going to die? And more anxiety builds and builds. And it wasn't until just before I think I fell pregnant with Orlo. And I went back to my GP and I said, look, this cardiologist said I'm fine. Like there's nothing wrong with me as such. I just have tachycardia, but I don't want to live my life like that anymore. It's not healthy and it's not fun to fear your life every day because your heart beats so fast for no reason. Like I'd be sitting there and it would be going crazy, but I was this healthy, 20-year-old, 21-year-old that shouldn't be having health problems. So I was speaking to a girl and she said she dealt with the same thing and it was a little focus in her heart that ticks randomly and tells your heart to go really fast and then stops. And then she said she saw a electrocardiologist. And I said to my GP, maybe I should go see one of these. Like maybe it is the electronics in my heart. It's not actually my heart. And then I went to go change GP through a cardiologist privately. And he was amazing. It was the best decision I've ever made, was to change, still cardiologists, but they look further into what is wrong with you, not just the ECG of your heart and looking that it's normal when it's functioning fine, I guess. So I fell pregnant with Orlo and my pregnancy was fine. I had a lot of anxiety throughout my pregnancy, or making my heart race really fast for no reason, or just fearing a lot and becoming absorbed in my head, so not knowing what was wrong with me, but there was nothing wrong. It was just a mind game now. So I dealt with feeling like I was dying or feeling like something was wrong, when in actual fact nothing was wrong. It was just this voice in my head this whole time telling me, you're going to die really young, your heart is going to have a heart attack, all the other stuff of self-doubt, you're not good enough, you're a bad mom. If someone tells you something that day that really affects you, then you take it and you run with it, which was really draining, I guess, because I was already a mum and then I was dealing with this stupid voice in my head running me down every day, telling me there was something wrong when I knew there wasn't. And I knew there wasn't, but I needed that reassurance and I needed that diagnosis for me to be like, okay, like you need to go on some medication, you need to just calm down, you need to really think about yourself here because you're affecting everyone. So then I had Orlo and I was fine, and I kept seeing this cardiologist and I said, look, I think there's something wrong with me. Like if I stand up, my heart rate goes really fast. If I do anything. I'm just always really, really high. My heart rate's really high. So he investigated further, and straight away he came up with a diagnosis for me. So I have focal arterial tachycardia, which is that little focus in your electronics of your heart that randomly ticks to say, hey, let's just randomly go fast for no reason. But it also is a massive, massive, massive part of anxiety. So the reason why that little focus can tick, no one knows, but anxiety, stress, depression, everything falls into the category of making it happen. So he can't tell me why I have it. He hopefully thinks I'll grow out of it, but I can't grow out of that without training myself to just chill out. So he also said, do you think you suffer from anxiety? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm just going off what doctors tell me. So if you tell me I'm fine, then I think I'm fine until something happens and then I'm not fine. So he sent me, my doctor, a huge note stating, we've come up with a diagnosis for her heart. It's not dangerous. It's normal. She has low blood pressure, which also affects it. The reason why her heart does this could be from the adrenaline, could be from anxiety, could be from stress, could be from not enough sleep. There's many factors that fall into this category, which makes it really hard to deal with. So he puts me on medication, and after many, many sleepless nights, and my auntie's a nurse, so I would often call her saying, look, something's wrong with me, I've gone really hot, my heart rate's gone really fast, but I wouldn't take this medication because I didn't want to be someone on medication for the rest of my life. I didn't want to have to rely on medication to live or to be somewhat happy. And poor Drew had to deal with me being super emotional all the time, stressing about this stuff when all I had to do was take a tablet and I would be fine.